we have a great new feature for power users of software. For those of you who like to either digitize and create your own designs from scratch or edit designs to make them run a little bit better. There's many times where you have a design like what you see on the screen here, and you need to add an object in the design, and maybe it is something that goes along with this color right here, this kind of a pewter or a teal color. And so when you create something new, what happens, regardless of what color you choose, like if I go down and I choose that color I want to use, when I create something and I right mouse click, it throws it down at the bottom of the page. So if this needed to go and stitch at the time that the other color stitches, so if this needed to be stitching out up at the top, you would have to move it. And if it needed to be after this object and before that one, you would have to come in and you'd have to move it, and then you have to select all and change it all back to the same color. It can be a little time consuming to do, and especially when you're working with a very large design that have a lot of objects in the same color sequence. And so what we've added in the software for this update is to digitize an object before or after a selected piece. So if I wanted to add something in between after this object and before this one, we now have the ability to right click and do a digitize path before or after. So if you want it to be after the object, you click this. If you want it to stitch before that, you would click before. And so for like this example right here, you can see that we have 3 different objects, but you can see that this is also the first color in the design, that this red and stuff will go after it. So me being a person that likes to keep the machine running and wants to eliminate as many jumps or trims as I possibly can, I would want to come in here and actually add a running stitch that starts where this fill stitch ends and it stops right where this next object begins, so that the needle just keeps going, and it just eliminates like those false thread breaks that you sometimes get, and it just affects the quality of the design, the outcome. So if I wanted to do that, I would just come in here and I would select this first object here, and I would take a look at where it starts and ends. And so what I did is, just to show you, is with it selected, I clicked on this icon right here, which allows me to get into the shape tool over here. And when I do that, it lets me see the different nodes, angle lines, and start point and end point. Because when I'm doing this, I want to start my pathing stitch where this one ends and take it to where this one begins. And so I know that it ends right here in this corner, so now I need to look at the next one, this one, and see where it starts. It starts right here. So I need a running stitch that goes from here to here so that it can just keep going, so that I don't have to trim or anything. So knowing that it starts here and the first one ends right here, I can come back and select this first one, right mouse click, digitize a path after it, because I want it to come after the fill. And then all I need to do is come up and select the running stitch tool, and I will just create a running stitch that goes from the end point of the first one to the start point of the next one. I'll right mouse click, and you'll notice that it dropped it in here. So it dropped in after the first one. I will have to come back in and select all of them and change the colors. But now what you'll see is after that fill stitch, now it's going to do a running stitch into the next object. It just keeps it going in a continuous motion without trims or jumps. And so I would do the same between this object and this object. So again, I know I want to put it after this one, so I'm going to find out where it ends, and it ends right here in the design. I'm going to take a look at the next one, and I'm going to see where it begins. It begins up here in the top left corner. So again, I because this one ends right here, I'm going to do a running stitch from here to there. And so I will, with that one selected, I will right mouse click and digitize a path after it, and I will grab my running stitch tool and I will come in here and just put this running stitch in here, right mouse click, and you'll see that it put it after this object and before this object. So now I could select everything again and change the color to make it all one, and now these are going to stitch in a continuous motion, and I'm not going to have to do any trims or anything. So that's just an example of how you can utilize this tool. You can utilize it for anything. Maybe it's maybe I need to put detail work inside of here. Maybe I want to put a little pink, this color pink in here. So what I could do is just select this last object here, and I could do an insert, a digitize path after it, and I could come in here with the running stitch tool and I could just create some different, wait, I was going to go right here. I could create like a little pattern in here that I wanted to add some detail to, and then right click, and you'll see that it put it in there. I do need to change the color, but you can see that it does put it in that location, so I don't have to drag it from the bottom into the new position. So digitizing before and after, it's a really helpful tool. It kind of helps eliminate some time you spend on adding elements to a design. I like to use it in the cases that you saw here, and so we're excited to see what you can do with it. Hope you enjoy this new feature.